There is a particular sound that a hotel makes when it is empty, and anyone who has worked in hospitality knows it immediately. It is not silence, it is worse than silence. It is the sound of a building that was designed to be full, still running at full capacity for nobody. The air conditioning hums through corridors with no one in them. The lift arrives at floors where no doors open. The kitchen extractor keeps turning in a kitchen preparing for only a fraction of the guests it was built to serve. A pianist plays in a lobby with only 4 people sitting there. In the spring of 2026, that sound spread across one of the greatest concentrations of hotel rooms anywhere on Earth. Dubai has around 150,000 hotel rooms. In February, roughly 4 out of 5 of them were occupied, and the city was enjoying the best tourism numbers in its history. But by March, occupancy had fallen to just 33%. Nearly 5 million passengers who were expected to pass through Dubai International Airport during the first 3 months of the year simply never arrived. The forecasts for what would happen next were worse than anything the city had faced in the modern era. This is the story of the worst tourism season Dubai has ever experienced. It explains exactly how a tourism machine that took 25 years to build came to a halt in only about 8 weeks. It also reveals a unique feature of Dubai's calendar that turned a major shock into a lost year. But there is another part of the story that almost nobody noticed. While the hotels became empty, something else in Dubai remained completely, stubbornly full. If you want to understand what really happened to Dubai's tourism season and what it reveals about the city, you first have to understand something most visitors never think about. Dubai does not really have a normal year, it has a season. Unlike cities such as London, Paris or New York, where business continues throughout the year with only moderate seasonal changes, Dubai operates on one of the most extreme annual cycles of any major destination in the world. The reason is simple: the climate. From roughly November through March, the weather is almost perfect. Warm, dry and sunny, the exact conditions travelers from Europe, Russia or China dream about while their own countries are cold and dark. This is Dubai's peak season. The beaches are crowded, hotels charge their highest prices, conferences, exhibitions and trade shows take place one after another. The Dubai Shopping Festival attracts millions of visitors, and the entire tourism industry earns most of its yearly income during these months. Then, from about May through September, the desert takes over. Temperatures climb above 45 degrees Celsius. Humidity along the coast makes the air feel like a hot towel wrapped around your face. Spending long periods outside becomes uncomfortable and, for some people, even dangerous. Tourism drops dramatically. Hotel prices collapse. Anyone who can afford to leave the city does so. Hotels struggle through a long, hot, half-empty summer while waiting for October. Dubai has built an entire economy around compressing most of its yearly earnings into only a few good months. That concentration creates enormous strength. But, as 2026 demonstrated with brutal clarity, it also creates enormous vulnerability. Because when your entire year depends on only 4 months, you simply cannot afford to lose even one of them. It is worth picturing what Dubai looks like during a normal peak season because the emptiness only makes sense when compared to that image. In a normal January, Dubai is one of the busiest places on Earth. The beaches along JBR are packed with northern Europeans enjoying the sunshine in the middle of winter after travelling thousands of kilometres. The Dubai Shopping Festival is in full swing, attracting millions of visitors and turning the city's malls into something much bigger than a simple retail promotion. Every convention center ballroom is booked one event after another, with trade shows, exhibitions, and corporate conferences bringing thousands of delegates into the city. Desert safari companies run multiple trips every day, taking visitors into the dunes for sunset experiences, barbecue dinners, camel rides, and photographs. The famous brunch scene operates at full capacity. Restaurants are fully booked weeks in advance. Hotel room prices reach their highest point of the year because few other destinations can offer the same combination of sunshine, safety, luxury, and world-class infrastructure. By February, Dubai International Airport becomes a constant river of travelers. That is the tourism machine operating at full power. It is one of the most impressive commercial systems anywhere in the world, and it only runs at full strength for roughly 120 days.
Every one of those days helps support the remaining 8 months of the year when the city cannot attract visitors on the same scale. Now imagine removing the final 3 weeks of that season. Then cancel the bookings that were supposed to follow. Suddenly the mathematics no longer works. Dubai did not simply lose some tourists. It lost part of the only period when large-scale tourism is actually possible. Now consider the timing. The conflict began at the very end of February. Not in July, when tourism is already quiet and any disruption would have been absorbed during the off-season. Not in October, at the beginning of the season, when there would at least have been time to recover. Instead, it happened at the worst possible moment. March is still an important tourism month. But something even more damaging also happened. The booking window was destroyed. Most people never think about how long-haul tourism actually works. A traveler from Manchester, Munich, or Mumbai planning a holiday to Dubai in July, August, or October does not wait until those months to make the reservation. They usually book many months in advance. A large percentage of bookings for the rest of the year are made immediately after the winter season ends, when people return from one vacation and begin planning the next. That means the final week of February and the entire month of March are not only important for current tourism. They are also the period when much of the rest of the year's business is sold. In 2026, those exact weeks were dominated by news reports showing drone interceptions over the Gulf. Airlines were suspending flights. The British Foreign Office advised against all but essential travel to the UAE. Faced with that situation, very few families were willing to book a holiday to Dubai. The city did not simply lose its March visitors. It also lost many of the reservations that would have filled hotels throughout the rest of the year and all the way to Christmas. The numbers released during those weeks were difficult to believe. Hotel occupancy in Dubai dropped to just 33.1% in March, a fall of more than 54% compared with the same month the previous year. Across the UAE, occupancy fell to around 36%. Dubai International Airport, usually the busiest international airport in the world, handled only 18.6 million passengers during the first quarter, compared with 23.4 million during the same period the year before. That meant approximately 4.8 million travelers never arrived. Around 37,000 flights were cancelled. Moody's Analytics projected that hotel occupancy during the second quarter could fall to nearly 10%, describing it as an effective shutdown of large parts of the hospitality industry. Their forecast suggested that conditions might not return to pre-conflict levels until early 2027. Just 8 weeks earlier, Dubai had been celebrating nearly 20 million international visitors during 2025, hotel occupancy close to 80%, and room prices rising by more than 13% year-over-year. An industry does not move from record-breaking success to the possibility of an effective shutdown in only 2 months unless the system underneath is far more fragile than it appears. There was a reason Moody's projected such an extreme decline, and it brings us back to Dubai's unique calendar. April, May, and June are not ordinary months for Dubai's tourism industry. They mark the beginning of the long descent into the extreme summer heat. During this period, the weather changes from being Dubai's greatest attraction to becoming its biggest obstacle. Every year, hotel occupancy naturally falls during these months, regardless of what is happening elsewhere in the world. Hotels expect it. They lower their prices. They schedule renovations. They reduce staffing levels. They simply endure the slow season because the profits earned during winter are expected to carry them through the difficult summer. When Moody's modeled the second quarter of 2026, they were not looking at a conflict affecting an ordinary business period. They were looking at a conflict striking exactly when Dubai was already entering its weakest tourism season. Two separate forces were pushing demand downward at exactly the same time. That is how forecasts reached occupancy levels as low as 10%. It was not a single disaster. It was the collapse in travel demand arriving at precisely the moment when demand naturally declines every year, while the damaged booking pipeline ensured that very few new visitors would replace those who cancelled. The tourism season did not simply end early. It ended early and immediately handed the city over to the hottest months of the year, when tourism is already at its weakest. The airlines became the mechanism through which the collapse spread. In Dubai, airlines are not just another industry. They are the circulatory system that keeps the entire tourism economy alive. Emirates suspended flights. Etihad followed shortly afterward. Qatar Airways also halted operations. European airlines soon reduced their services as well. British Airways suspended flights to Dubai until at least June. Lufthansa, Air France, and KLM also suspended operations indefinitely. Governments updated their travel advice. The British Foreign Office warned against all but essential travel. The U.S. State Department issued a Level 3 travel advisory. These warnings had consequences that many travelers never fully understand. Government travel advisories do much more than simply recommend caution. They affect travel insurance. Many insurance policies become limited or completely invalid once a government advises against traveling to a destination. For a family planning a holiday, this completely changes the decision. Instead of simply considering whether the destination feels safe, they must also consider whether they will have any insurance protection if something goes wrong. Corporate travel departments become even more cautious. Very few companies are willing to send employees to locations their own governments advise against visiting. This created another major problem for Dubai. A significant part of the city's tourism industry is not based on leisure travelers. It depends on conferences, exhibitions, business meetings, and corporate events. These events are organized many months in advance. The organizers cancel them at the first sign of legal or safety concerns. Once the travel advisories were issued, event schedules quickly began to collapse. Hotels lost not only vacation travelers but also the large group bookings that usually provide a reliable foundation for business throughout the season. Both the floor and the ceiling of demand disappeared at the same time. There is, however, an unexpected twist in this story. While Dubai's hotels were becoming empty, its shopping malls were not. Most people imagine a tourism collapse as an entire city becoming deserted. They picture empty streets, quiet shopping centers, and abandoned public spaces. That was not what happened in Dubai. The city's largest malls continued operating at 95% to 99% occupancy, with long waiting lists of international brands hoping to secure retail space. Dubai Mall welcomed around 111 million visitors in 2024, making it one of the most visited destinations in the world, while maintaining roughly 98% retail occupancy. Prime retail rents increased by about 9% year-over-year, placing Dubai among the world's fastest-growing retail markets. Retail contributes more than a quarter of Dubai's entire GDP, making it the city's largest economic sector. Rather than slowing expansion, developers continued investing billions of dirhams into expanding Dubai Mall of the Emirates, and several new shopping centers across the emirate. The picture was therefore unusual. The hotels became quiet. the malls remained crowded. Understanding why reveals something important about what Dubai has become. The reason for this difference is simple. Hotels and shopping malls serve two completely different groups of people. Hotels depend on international tourists. These visitors are mobile, have many travel options, and can easily decide to spend their holiday somewhere else, such as Thailand or another destination. Shopping malls, however, depend largely on residents. Dubai now has around 4 million permanent residents, and they did not leave the city. They still needed groceries. They still bought clothes. They still went out for dinner. They still needed comfortable, air-conditioned places where families could spend time together, especially during the hotter months. Over the last decade, Dubai's retail economy has quietly become much more dependent on residents than many people realize. That is one reason the malls remained busy even while tourist numbers collapsed. There was another reason as well. When the outside world feels uncertain and news headlines create anxiety, people often stay closer to home instead of traveling. In Dubai, where spending time outdoors is already difficult for much of the year, shopping malls naturally become the center of daily life. As a result, some of the business that beaches, tour companies, and outdoor attractions lost may actually have shifted toward indoor shopping centers. The result was a city divided into two completely different realities. Shopping malls remained crowded with residents. Only a short drive away, hotel corridors stood nearly empty while housekeeping staff waited for guests who never arrived. But this contrast does not mean the damage was small. To understand the real impact, you have to look beyond the large hotel chains. Tourism is not just about hotels. It is a huge network of businesses that all depend on the success of the season. Many of these businesses are much smaller and far more financially vulnerable than international hotel groups. They include desert safari operators managing fleets of vehicles, dhow cruise companies, diving schools, tour guides, professional photographers, beach clubs, excursion companies, souvenir businesses, small restaurants located near hotels where the overwhelming majority of customers are tourists. Many of these businesses earn almost all of their yearly profit during Dubai's 4 strong tourism months. Throughout the summer they often operate at a loss, surviving only because the winter season usually generates enough income to carry them through. If the final weeks of one season disappear and bookings for the following season collapse as well, many of these businesses simply do not have enough financial reserves to survive until 2027. Below the business owners are the employees. This is where a lost tourism season stops being just an economic statistic. Dubai's tourism workforce is overwhelmingly made up of foreign workers. Housekeepers, drivers, waiters, tour guides, kitchen staff, retail employees. Many come from South Asia, Africa, and the Philippines. Most support families living thousands of kilometers away. Some are still paying off recruitment debts that allowed them to obtain jobs in Dubai. When hotel occupancy falls from around 80% to only 33%, working hours are reduced. Overtime disappears. Shifts become fewer. In Dubai, employment is not only a source of income. It is also the legal basis for remaining in the country. For a hotel company, a lost season means lower profits. For an individual employee cleaning hotel rooms or serving guests, a lost season can mean losing the legal right to stay in Dubai altogether. The government responded quickly. That deserves recognition. Dubai announced relief measures for businesses in the hospitality and tourism sectors, including deferred fees as part of a broader support package worth around 1 billion dirhams. Tourism authorities continued promoting Dubai as open, safe, and fully operational. Hotels introduced aggressive discounts, special promotional offers, flexible cancellation policies. Everything the industry could reasonably do to encourage visitors to return. Marketing efforts shifted toward regional travelers and residents of neighboring Gulf countries who understood the situation better than tourists watching international news from Europe. Medical tourism, a sector Dubai has spent years developing, also continued attracting visitors. The city's 4 million residents continued supporting local businesses. These measures helped reduce some of the damage. However, they had clear limitations. Discounts only influence travelers who are comparing prices. They do nothing for travelers whose primary concern is safety. And during the spring of 2026, safety became the only factor that truly mattered. No discount can overcome a government travel advisory. No advertising campaign can compete with television images showing military activity and regional uncertainty. For all of Dubai's remarkable ability to control almost every aspect of its own environment. From indoor climate to world-class infrastructure, the one thing it could not control was the international news cycle. That may have been the most frustrating aspect of the entire crisis. Now it is important to be precise about one claim. Was this really the worst tourism season in Dubai's history? The honest answer is more complicated than the headline. In terms of absolute numbers, probably not. During 2020, when the global pandemic stopped international aviation almost completely, Dubai was effectively closed along with much of the rest of the world. No tourism figures from 2026 were worse than those recorded during that global shutdown. A more accurate description is that this was Dubai's worst tourism season since the pandemic and the worst caused by anything other than a worldwide shutdown. Yet for many people living through it, 2026 may have felt even worse. There is an important reason for that. In 2020, every major tourism destination was closed. Dubai lost visitors, but so did nearly every competitor around the world. No one chose Thailand instead of Dubai because Thailand was also closed. When international travel resumed, Dubai reopened faster and more aggressively than many competitors and even gained market share. The situation in 2026 was completely different. The rest of the world remained open. Families that decided not to visit Dubai simply booked holidays somewhere else. Many traveled to East Asia or Europe instead. Some of those travelers discovered destinations they enjoyed just as much, or perhaps even more. Once travelers develop new habits and favorite destinations, convincing them to return becomes much more difficult. That is why industry reports described a major redistribution of tourism demand toward East Asia and parts of Europe. A shared global crisis costs you 1 year. A crisis affecting only your destination can cost you customers for many years. It is worth considering where those nearly 5 million missing visitors actually went. People who cancel one holiday rarely stop traveling altogether. Instead, they choose another destination. Travel industry reports suggested that many travelers redirected their vacations toward countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, and other parts of East Asia, where they enjoyed sunshine, attractive prices, excellent food, and completely different cultural experiences. For many travelers, those alternatives were not compromises. They were upgrades. Some of those people may never have considered visiting those destinations if concerns about Dubai had not changed their plans. This creates one of the greatest long-term risks hidden inside a single lost tourism season. Dubai's appeal has always been based on convenience, safety, sunshine, luxury, and spectacular attractions. For more than 20 years, that combination has been extremely successful. But it has never been completely irreplaceable. Unlike places such as Rome, Kyoto, or Machu Picchu, Dubai is rarely viewed as a once-in-a-lifetime destination. It is usually one attractive option among several excellent choices. Every year that travelers choose another destination instead, Dubai risks slipping a little lower on their future travel list. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is investing enormous sums into developing luxury Red Sea resorts aimed at attracting many of the same visitors who traditionally vacationed in Dubai. The tourism season will almost certainly recover. The more difficult question is whether every one of those 5 million missing visitors will return. That answer may take years to become clear. It is equally important to understand that a tourism crisis is not the same thing as a citywide economic crisis. Many other parts of Dubai's economy remained remarkably strong throughout 2026. During the first half of the year, Dubai recorded more than 79,000 residential property sales worth over 221 billion dirhams. The UAE economy continued growing. Foreign direct investment reached record levels. Luxury property sales above $10 million reached new highs. The city's shopping malls remained between 95% and 99% occupied. This was not the story of an entire city collapsing. It was the story of one very important sector suffering a sudden and severe shock while many other parts of the economy continued operating successfully. Both realities existed at the same time. Ignoring either one would create an incomplete picture. Still, the tourism industry occupies a unique position within Dubai's economy. Tourism is far more than another business sector. It is Dubai's showroom to the world. It fills the airplanes. It creates the images that encourage international investors to buy property. It introduces millions of visitors to the city every year. Many tourists eventually become residents, investors, or business owners after first experiencing Dubai as visitors. That flow of people quietly supports many other industries. For the first time in almost 25 years, the top of that pipeline was switched off. The long-term consequences may not appear immediately in hotel occupancy figures. Instead, they may emerge years later through fewer property searches, fewer international investors, and slower population growth. By then, very few people will connect those changes to a tourism season that disappeared during the spring of 2026. There is a broader pattern hidden inside this story, and it is not unique to Dubai. Before understanding that pattern, it helps to compare this crisis with the two previous major shocks Dubai experienced. The comparison is revealing. In 2009, the crisis was financial. Property prices collapsed. Construction projects stopped. The emirate required financial support. But tourists continued arriving because a financial crisis does not make beaches less attractive. In fact, tourism helped support Dubai while the property market struggled. The situation in 2020 was almost the opposite. Tourists disappeared completely because the pandemic shut down global travel. However, the entire world faced the same situation. Dubai responded by reopening earlier and more aggressively than many competitors, hosting Expo 2020 while much of the world was still hesitant about international travel. As a result, Dubai managed to gain market share once tourism recovered. Both previous crises gave Dubai something it could use. In 2009, it still had tourists. In 2020, it had the opportunity to reopen faster than competitors. The situation in 2026 was different. The tourists disappeared. The rest of the world remained open. There was no competitive advantage to seize. No major project could immediately solve the problem. No spectacular announcement could persuade millions of travelers to ignore safety concerns. The only option was to wait. For a city famous for bold action, rapid development, and ambitious projects, waiting may have been the most uncomfortable experience of all. There was nothing new to build. Nothing dramatic to launch. Nothing that could instantly restore confidence. Everything depended on one simple question. Did people feel safe enough to travel? The answer to that question was being shaped not inside Dubai, but by events happening elsewhere in the region. Every destination built around a short tourism season faces the same structural risk. Examples exist all over the world. Ski resorts depend on only a few months of reliable snowfall. One unusually warm winter can destroy an entire year's income. Mediterranean islands often earn most of their annual revenue during the summer. A single season of wildfires or political unrest can severely damage local businesses. Beach destinations depend on predictable weather. One destructive hurricane season can create years of financial hardship. The underlying mechanism is always the same. The concentration that makes successful years extremely profitable also leaves almost no margin for error. There is no strong backup season available. The quieter months are already expected to lose money. Dubai has pushed this model further than almost any other destination. It built one of the world's most remarkable tourism economies around only 4 months of ideal weather while spending the rest of the year dealing with extreme heat that naturally discourages visitors. That model works brilliantly until the window closes unexpectedly. In 2026, that window closed early. So what happens next? The most likely outcome is a gradual recovery followed by a stronger return during the next winter tourism season. Fear usually fades faster than many people expect. Airlines restore routes once passenger demand returns. Dubai has enormous financial resources and one of the strongest tourism marketing systems in the world. The real test will be October and November, when the next tourism season begins. If hotels fill again during the final months of the year, then 2026 will probably be remembered as a lost spring and summer rather than the beginning of a long-term decline. If demand fails to recover, then the situation becomes much more serious. Instead of one difficult season, it would suggest a structural change in tourism behavior. Industry forecasts suggested that conditions were unlikely to return to pre-conflict levels before early 2027. Even under the optimistic scenario, much of 2026 was effectively considered lost. Dubai will almost certainly attract tourists again. The remaining questions are how many will return, how quickly they will come back, and how many discovered another destination they now prefer. The hotels became unusually quiet. Yet nothing in the city itself was physically damaged. The beaches remained just as beautiful. The buildings remained exactly where they had always been. That is what makes a lost tourism season so different from almost every other kind of decline. When a factory town loses its main industry, the evidence is obvious. Boarded-up buildings. Empty parking lots. Abandoned factories. Weeds growing through cracked concrete. You can physically see the decline. A tourism city is different. When it loses a season, almost nothing changes on the surface. The hotel rooms are still perfectly prepared. The swimming pools are cleaned every morning. The breakfast buffet is fully stocked. Employees report to work in neatly pressed uniforms. Everything operates exactly as it should. The only thing missing is the guests. That is, in many ways, even more unsettling than visible decay. Decay tells the story of time passing. An empty 5-star hotel during the busiest months of the year tells a different story. It tells you that somewhere, by people you will probably never meet, a simple decision was made. The answer was no. Multiply that decision across 150,000 hotel rooms, and you understand what Dubai looked like during the spring of 2026. One of the largest and most sophisticated hospitality systems ever built continued operating at full readiness while waiting for visitors who never arrived. Unlike many other economic losses, a tourism season cannot simply be recovered later. A cancelled conference can always be rescheduled. A delayed skyscraper can still be completed next year. A failed property sale may happen again with another buyer. But Dubai's 4 months of perfect weather happen only once each year. Once they pass, they are gone forever. The revenue that should have been earned during those months cannot simply be earned in August instead. That is what makes this type of loss so absolute. It is not postponed. It is erased. In only 8 weeks, Dubai moved from enjoying the strongest tourism performance in its history to facing one of its most difficult seasons. This was not a failure of competence. Dubai responded quickly. Authorities introduced support measures. Hotels reduced prices. Tourism officials continued promoting the city. The infrastructure continued functioning exactly as designed. The crisis simply demonstrated a basic reality. Any destination whose prosperity depends on millions of strangers choosing to visit will always remain vulnerable to forces beyond its control. The shopping malls remained busy because the residents never left. The property market continued functioning because investors were still active. But the tourism season, the 4 months around which Dubai organizes much of its economy, was gone. And a tourism season cannot be postponed. Empires rarely decline in a single dramatic moment. They decline through patterns. One of the quietest patterns is when a place builds extraordinary success by concentrating everything into one short period of ideal conditions, only to discover that this narrow window can also be closed by events completely outside its control. Dubai built one of the world's greatest tourism industries around a few perfect months of weather and global confidence. During the spring of 2026, it learned that both can disappear much faster than they were built. The next chapter would begin when the following tourism season opened. Only then would Dubai discover how many visitors were willing to return, and how many had already found somewhere else.